I grew up in the UK. I grew up in a very poor family. My dad's side of the family were what you call like traveller gypsies. We grew up in a council house. It's like very poor housing in the UK. I grew up very tough. We were very poor. It wasn't until later in my life when I started looking into being an actress that I started actually like learning how to talk properly and learning how to present myself. And now I'm Muslim, alhamdulillah, and that's the highlight of my life. I didn't have a religion, but I had faith. In difficult moments, I would find myself talking to God. I didn't know what God was, who God is, but I would, if I was in a difficult scenario, I would be like, God, can you please help me? I probably wouldn't use the word God, but yeah, I believed in a higher power, but I never really properly thought about it. I never told anyone that I believed. I was one of those people. It was when I was in Turkey, and it was when I was in Blue Mosque, Sultan Ahmed, I think you guys call it. That's when I started really seeing into religion for the first time. I'd experienced other religions, but not to the depth that I experienced Islam. Other religions, I just kind of read about them, but Islam I experienced through feeling. From being inside the mosque, from hearing the azan, it was completely different. I had lots of prejudices, but they were subconscious. I never thought of myself as an Islamophobe. I never thought I didn't like a group of people. I was always trying to be kind. I was trying to be a good person. But yeah, I did have prejudices. When I first came to Turkey, I remember my granny said to me, please don't go to a Muslim country. Please, just don't go. She thought something was going to happen to me. And when she told me, don't go, it's a Muslim country, I was like, honestly, I got scared. I definitely did have that notion. When I first visited a mosque in Turkey, I thought the people were going to tell me I can't go in. I thought that they were going to, laugh at me. They were going to stare at me in a negative way. I expected the worst when I went into a mosque for the first time. I always had a bad relationship with alcohol. So when I was 8 years old, my brother died from alcohol. And the reason why it affected me so much is because obviously I was very close to him. He was my brother. But the reason why it affected me so much is because when he died, the doctor said that if he wasn't drunk, he wouldn't have died. He got drunk, he got in a fight. One punch, and he hit the floor, the brain hit the back of his head and he died. As soon as he hit...
They ask you, O beloved, the ruling regarding wine and gambling. Say you that there is great sin in both, and also some worldly benefit for people, but their sin is greater than their benefit. And they ask you what they should spend. Say you, that which remains extra. This is how Allah explains His verses to you, that you may ponder.
At the floor, he was dead. It was instant. But the doctor said if he wasn't drunk, he would have tensed for that punch and he wouldn't have died. That was the reason. So if he hadn't been drinking, he wouldn't have died. So I always had a problem with alcohol.
The devil desires only that he infuses hatred and enmity between you through wine and gambling, and to prevent you from the remembrance of Allah and Salah. So, have you abstained?
And after his death, I was very young, but my family, they didn't understand the negative impacts of alcohol. They actually carried on drinking. They drank more than they used to. My dad went to pubs even more. I saw him even less. He was always at the pub. And through him going to the pub, my dad then met a 15-year-old girl.
Do not even go near zina, i.e., that is unlawful intercourse. It is indeed shamelessness and a very evil way.
Who he left my mum for. He ran away with a 15-year-old girl and he left his entire family behind because of alcohol. And this is something that I always advocated for when I grew up, because my entire family split in half over the course of a year. This all happened in a year. It was me, my dad, my brother and mum. And then that was it. Half was gone. I never saw my dad again. Half was gone. It was me and my mum. And I think what happened after this incident is I grew up hating alcohol. I hated parties. I couldn't attend parties. I felt really bad. But as I started getting older, probably around 20, I started thinking, oh, maybe it's not so bad. I never turned into a party freak. I never went through that. For me, it was about networking. Everyone said, if you go to these clubs, you'll meet the right people, you'll get in the right circles, you'll network. So I started doing it for that reason. There was one time when I was in LA, I went to a nightclub and somebody spiked my drink. And that same night, I ended up in hospital because somebody tried to kidnap me, pretty much. Someone tried to kidnap me while I was in LA.
And stay in your homes and do not remain unveiled like the former unveiling in the times of ignorance. And keep salah established and pay zakah and obey Allah and His Messenger. Allah wills only to remove every impurity from you. O people of the house of the Prophet, and make you absolutely pure by cleansing you.
And after that moment, I remember waking up in the hospital. I had makeup all down my face. I was in an awful state. And I remember thinking, why did I do this to myself? Like, I've always been against alcohol. Why have I started getting in this life? But the worst part was, after that, I didn't stop. I carried on partying, not as much as my friends, a little bit here and there. And when I came to Turkey with bad intentions. I didn't have good intentions when I came here. So like Allah really waited until I'd lost like my whole self pretty much, to the extent that I was looking for plastic surgery. Like I was actually trying to change myself. Allah waited until I lost my whole self, until Allah took me to Islam. I'd be like, people in Turkey, they do stress beads. It's so cool, mum. So when I actually Googled for the first time what you're supposed to say when you do it, and I learned about Subhanallah, Alhamdulillah, Allahu Akbar, and I learned the meaning of these words, and I started doing it for the first time, there was another moment on top of that that was really special. And that was a moment that happened after I did tasbih for the first time. And that was a moment when I was coming out of the mosque, Blue Mosque here in Istanbul. And I stood between Blue Mosque and Hagia Sophia. That's where I heard the azan for the first time. I mean, I'd heard it before, but this is when I really heard it. Like I actually stopped and listened to the azan. Because when you're standing between those two mosques, it's so loud. The azan is so loud. And I remember standing there and just hearing the azan and thinking, wow, that is so beautiful. That is so peaceful. And I remember in that moment, I had an hour journey back to my hostel. I had to walk an hour back to my hostel. I didn't know the way. I was thinking to myself, okay, I need to go back to my hostel. How do I get there? So I got my phone out. I was ready to Google Map. And then my phone that was on 50% battery just died. And I remember feeling really anxious. I was thinking, how am I going to get back to my hostel? I'm in a foreign country. I don't know where to go. And I was panicking, and the azan was still playing. And then all of a sudden, it was like all my worries just dropped. Like it was like everything just disappeared, and my anxiety left my body. And I thought, God, if you're real, this is kind of what's going through my mind. Like, God, if you're real, help me get back to my hostel. And in that moment, in a very, 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 very long time, I wasn't anxious. I wasn't worried. Like before I became Muslim, I think I spent a lot of my time being worried. Like everything worried me. Like I had such bad anxiety. Like, what if I go in the street and this thing happens? What if I do this and this happens? And then once I discovered Islam, once I became Muslim, it was the remedy to my anxiety. It was the thing that I'd been searching for so long to stop me from feeling anxious all the time and worried all the time, because I learned tawakkul. I learned about having faith in God, about having faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That feeling was what actually drew me to Islam.
O people, worship your Lord who has created you and those before you with the hope that you may attain piety.